Okay, today we'll be talking about the Rocky Mountains. Rocky Mountains are absolutely gorgeous and have a very important part of our history. The states that we have here are Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. Um, Probably the toughest states to figure out are Wyoming, Colorado. They're just big boxes. They look almost exactly identical. Utah's got the notch. Nevada has the angle down here. You can tell Las Vegas right there. Idaho is this stringy looking one, and Montana's the big old lumpy one. Um, Obviously known for its Rocky Mountains, very high mountains, newer mountains, so you can see how jagged they are at the top, not like the Appalachian Mountains. And so you get a lot of breathtaking scenery there. As always, when you have mountains, you're going to have a lot of mining going on. So that instead of coal, like you'll see in the Appalachians, you'll see a lot of other kinds of metals like silver, gold, copper. These are going to form mining towns throughout the region, and people get rich. Some of those towns would stay, and a lot of the towns would just die off once they extracted the metals from that area. Two important things to note, or two important routes, is that this region is home to the Oregon Trail. You're not going to get through these jagged mountains very easily unless you find a good trail that has a lot of gaps through the mountains. Oregon Trail was one of those things. It was able to get through the Rocky Mountains, and once this trail was discovered, a lot of people were able to get to the West Coast, which is where a lot of people wanted to be for the weather, for the mining, for the farming. And so the Oregon Trail was very, very important. And then the second thing, um, around the Civil War time, we started the Transcontinental Railroad. All the railroads out east were doing great, but this part of the country was completely disconnected from the eastern part of the country. So they set up the Transcontinental Railroad to go through the mountains and get to the west coast so that we can trade back and forth more easily instead of becoming two countries. That we were in danger of doing that already with the Civil War. But then what about the West? They're going to develop their own country. They're going to have trading partners that are not part of the United States if we don't get them connected. So the Transcontinental Railroad was vital for that. All right, well, before we get to the cities, let's talk about our glossary word or phrase is the Continental Divide. This is something we should know from US 1. It is where the mountains are so tall that if rain falls on the eastern side, it's going to flow to the east, and if it falls on the western side, it's going to flow to the west. Kind of like a house where you see that divide on the roof. If it lands on one side of the roof, it's going to flow to one side of the house, and if it falls on the other side of the roof, it's going to flow the opposite direction. So the continental divide is kind of like the roof of America, and that's where all the water is going to be flowing, depending on where it falls on the continental divide. All right, so let's take a look at the cities. We've got two of them, Denver and Salt Lake City. Um, Denver was right over here, very important city, uh, very far east and not exactly very far north, but it is a very snowy, mountainy city. If you watch the Denver Broncos, you know that their stadium is called Mile High Stadium. It's a mile up in the air. And so you have very high elevation, great for skiing, for winter sports. Um, and probably the more one of the more famous cities here in the Rocky Mountains. When you think Rocky Mountains, a lot of people think Denver. And then Salt Lake City, where it was founded by the Mormons. It's located right over here, right? You see, you got Salt Lake and then Salt Lake City. It was founded by a religion called the Mormons, and they wanted to make their own big state called Deseret, which would have been like all this area right here. And instead, people started, because they started finding minerals out there and wanted to make a lot of money, they started carving other states out of where the Mormons wanted to set up their very big state over here. And so they ended up with the state of Utah, which was much smaller than what they wanted, but they still were able to set up their main city of Salt Lake City. And say what you will about their theology, uh, at least the Mormons that I've met, some of the nicest people you'll ever meet are Mormons. And you can see here they've set up, this is a church, this huge building right here. They're very serious about their religion. And so Salt Lake City is the center of gravity for that.